Good evening and welcome to APTN National News. I'm Leanne Sanders. Manitoba Premier Heather Stefanson is defending her decision not to search a Winnipeg area landfill for the remains of 2 Indigenous women. The Premier met with the families of the victims of an alleged serial killer yesterday, telling them she couldn't risk the health and safety of workers to do a search.
To leave my cousin there and say that it's okay. It's not okay.
Melissa Robinson was emotional after hearing the Premier's decision not to support a search for remains. Her cousin Morgan Harris's remains are believed to be in the landfill, along with those of Mercedes Myron and possibly another unidentified woman. A federally funded feasibility study said it was possible to do a search. It also cited asbestos and other hazards to workers. A search could take as long as 3 years and cost as much as $184 million. But with no guarantee remains would be found, the Premier said the risks are too high, a position she reiterated today.
It is about safety, and obviously the federal government, if they choose to go down that path, again, they're not right now, so we'll wait to see what they come up with. But we want to ensure the safety of workers first and foremost.
The Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs issued a statement today expressing disappointment and disbelief over the Premier's refusal to co-fund a search. I implore the Premier of Manitoba to reflect on the values of compassion, justice, and respect for the lives of all Manitobans, including those of First Nations. The AMC says it remains resolute in its commitment to advocating for the funding necessary to search the landfill thoroughly, and is waiting to hear from Federal Indigenous Services Minister Mark Miller. An APTN exclusive story now out of Ontario by APTN Investigates reporter Kenneth Jackson. APTN has obtained video of a Métis man with intellectual disabilities being repeatedly hit by a police officer while in custody of the Ontario Provincial Police. The video has no audio, but viewer discretion is advised.
According to court records, police say this never happened. Blow after blow after blow with a clenched fist on a Métis man with intellectual disabilities. That's what happened to Ronnie Taylor just over a year ago in Bracebridge, Ontario, following his arrest in an alleged domestic assault.
I think that I could have died that night with what he did to me.
The video continues. About 30 seconds after being struck more than a dozen times, Taylor collapses and appears to have a seizure.
I remember getting a twitch in my neck, and then everything went black in my eyes and I couldn't see a thing. And then I don't really remember much. I got up and it was almost like I didn't know what went on.
The officer's name is Constable Scott Anthony with the Ontario Provincial Police. And according to Anthony's notes on the night in question, he wrote, "Stop going into cell. Push towards cell. Squared off. Struck in mouth. Exchange empty hand blows until in cell." But that's not what the video shows. Anthony keeps striking Taylor in the head while in the cell, over and over. And as for what happened outside of the cell, Taylor remembers things a bit differently.
I just remember him saying, "Turn around," and he shoved me, and I put my hands up because I thought he was going to punch me in the face.
The police video has no audio, so APTN can't confirm exactly what was said, and Officer Scott Anthony declined to be interviewed for this story. But additional video obtained by APTN indicates Anthony was aggressive from his first encounter with Taylor inside the detachment. Here we see Taylor being led into the detachment by 2 other officers. Neither of them seem concerned with Taylor. And in fact, at one point, an officer walks up and gently pulls Taylor's face mask up over his nose. Less than 20 seconds later, we see Officer Scott Anthony for the first time. He walks directly up to Taylor and shoves him hard against the back of the chair he's been sitting on.
But you can't hear what you're saying.
but it doesn't seem to be, they're not too triggered by what you're saying. Then all of a sudden, this officer, Anthony, comes out of nowhere, walks up and hits you. Do you know why he did that?
No, I don't know why. I remember just he was very aggressive and he was a very scary guy.
Anthony then rips off Taylor's shoes and tosses them down the corridor towards the cell block. Anthony keeps his hand on Taylor, pinning him against the back of the chair. The other officer then goes to help Taylor up when Anthony grabs him again and pushes him up against the brick wall. They remove Taylor's handcuffs and appear to search him again before all three officers lead him to the cell. Since that night, Taylor has been forced to live with his mother, Ray Lowe, under strict bail conditions. Lowe says she's seen the video of inside the cell.
And it was really bad. But then when I saw my son fall and have a seizure and no one came, and my immediate thoughts were bleed in the brain, etc. I had lots of thoughts.
She worried for weeks that he would drop dead of a brain injury.
So that just shattered my world. Like, how am I supposed to tell my grandchildren to go to police officers for help?
Taylor also fears the police and doesn't like leaving his mother's home, even when his bail conditions allow him.
I don't leave. I don't like grocery shopping anymore because I'm afraid to go out into the public eye with police being around because I'm afraid that something bad's going to happen to me. I have bad dreams that they're going to break in my door and come and arrest me while I'm sleeping.
So he stays home, in part because of the fear, and also due to a court order relating to a domestic charge of assault and uttering threats. APTN reached out to the alleged victim in that case, and this is what she had to say. I do support him speaking up about this, and I think it's very important for the public to know. We should be able to have trust and rely on our justice system without worry of abuse of power. As for Taylor, he just wants one thing to happen.
I think he should go to jail for what he did to me.
Kenneth reached out to Scott Anthony through his lawyer, Karen Stein, but they declined to comment, quote, at this time in this forum. The Ontario Provincial Police sent an emailed response to questions, saying in part they have launched 2 reviews into the case, including one on how the OPP investigated Anthony over this matter. APTN's Savannah Kelly spoke in depth to Kenneth Jackson about he went to court to obtain the video.
Kenneth, how did you obtain the videos?
I went to court and I convinced the judge to release them to us. But that was the short story of it. The longer story is that I had to, I asked for them and the court wouldn't give them to me. And the Ministry of Attorney General stepped in and forced a judge to decide whether I should have them. That judge ordered me to apply for a hearing, and who then later recused himself because he made that order in conflict because he knows one of the officers or some to that effect, and created this whole cascading effect where I had to go through before a judge. I had to serve the Crown in defense. I had to be a lawyer for a day or two, but in the end, I convinced the judge to release him to us.
How did Constable Anthony Scott try to stop this video from being reported?
In the hearing that I had, where I convinced the judge to release them, he intervened and tried to convince the judge not to release the videos. In fact, his lawyer asked the judge to quash my application and put a publication ban on it. His argument was weak. Judge saw through it and released the videos to me.
And Constable Scott hasn't been charged in this case. Why is that?
He was investigated on multiple fronts. He was investigated internally by the OPP. They found no misconduct. He was investigated by the SIU, which is a Special Investigations Unit. It's the Ontario Police Watchdog. They found they have to meet a certain threshold. There has to be serious injury, sexual assault, or death. They didn't think that Ryan Taylor was injured enough for them to investigate, but they also didn't see the video. The OPP said that they never requested it, but the court documents say they were never given it either. So that's still being worked out. But I can say though, since I got these videos, the OPP told me they're reviewing their decision not to lay charges against Constable Anthony.
But he has been charged with another assault. What happened there?
What happened is about 2 months after what happened with Ronnie in June of 2022, So last year, he was involved. Constable Anthony was involved in another arrest where the person he arrested was severely injured, to the point where he was so severely injured that the charges that were laid against him were later withdrawn, because Anthony was charged with assault with a weapon and assault causing bodily harm. What they didn't know was that was also caught on video by local Home Hardware. So by the time that police found out it was on tape, all the officers involved, this is according to court records, all the officers involved had gotten on their story straight. Only the tape proved otherwise, and charges were laid against Constable Anthony.
Well, Kenneth, that's all the time we have. Thank you very much for your reporting on this story.
You're welcome.
On top of reviewing its own misconduct investigation into Constable Scott Anthony involving Taylor, the OPP says it has also launched a review into how video of the cell block altercation was withheld from Taylor's lawyer for several months. None of the allegations have been proven in court. For more, go to our website at www.aptnnews.ca. Ousted Assembly of First Nations National Chief Roseanne Archibald has spoken for the first time since a vote expelled her from office. The June 28th online vote saw 71% of the 268 chiefs and proxies vote Archibald out of office. The vote to remove Archibald from office comes after an external report into allegations of wrongdoing made by 5 staff members. Archibald released a 5-minute video on Monday night. In it, she calls on supporters and women in particular to take action.
You can call or text or email your chief and council, and you can ask for 2 things. 1, that they reinstate me as national chief, and 2, that they make sure that the forensic audit goes ahead. Now, I don't want to be reinstated because of my ego. I want to be reinstated because I have a sacred responsibility that I have to fulfill, and there has to be ceremony before I begin that journey and at the end. And what the chiefs did on June 28th is they ignored that ceremony. They ignored our sacred ways, and they just went ahead and did one of the most violent acts against an Indigenous First Nation woman leader ever.
Archibald, who made history as the first woman to be elected national chief of the FN, says she is getting pushback because she has, quote, been fighting corruption at the AFN since October 2020, unquote. Archibald called the HR investigation a distraction from what is really happening. The AFN will hold its annual General Assembly in Halifax next week. In a Facebook Live Q&A, Archibald said she was still undecided on whether she would attend in person. We have to take a break, but when we come back, we'll hear about a Junior Ranger summer camp in Quebec. Welcome back to APTN National News. The discovery of potential unmarked graves at former residential school sites across the country had a lot of Indigenous people refusing to take part in Canada Day festivities. In Winnipeg, a peaceful rally made its way through downtown, and it focused on honoring survivors. Tamara Pimentel was there.
On a day the whole country wears red to celebrate Canada's 156th birthday, a sea of orange marches through Winnipeg. For Elder Belinda Vandenbroek, there isn't much to celebrate on July 1st, other than supporters standing up to the injustices Indigenous people faced in the past and continue to live with today.
We still have so much to do in self-healing because no one is going to do that for us. We have to do that ourselves. Suicides, gangs, violence, all of that. These are all the end results of what was taken from us. It was literally taken. No one can deny that.
Vandenbroek spent 10 years in the Mackay Residential School in Dauphin, Manitoba. Now she works to stay connected to her culture and educate the younger people around her.
That's my life is about them. and getting back to who we are, knowing our culture, knowing where we come from, knowing our history in our homeland. I will teach any child, any adult, how to be proud of who they are and to love themselves, because we were taught to hate ourselves.
Dozens end their march at Manitoba's legislature near a small garden of orange flowers, honoring the children who never made it home from residential schools. Vandenbroek held a ceremony with 60 Scoop survivor Michael Yellowwing Cannon, who wants to see the Indian Act rescinded.
We hear your ideas on reconciliation, but we don't hear you talking anything about halting the Indian Act, the main genocidal tool. And that's what the truth we're trying to wake up today is. Like, no, this cannot continue. This state of affairs cannot continue. We can't continue on for another 100 years of CFS and whatever schemes they come up with. So that's why we're here, that we're resilient, that we are the land, we have land title, and genocide is not going to stop us.
Tamara Pimentel, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Junior Rangers from remote communities across Quebec recently came together for a training camp at a military base near Quebec City. Most of them are from First Nation and Inuit communities. And as Amelia Fournier explains, they found friends and skills.
7th Platoon, right turn!
These teenagers from far-flung communities across Quebec were brought together from thousands of kilometers away at Camp Ukpiapik to get a taste of what it takes to be a Canadian Ranger.
You take care of yourself, you help each other, you're a team.
And new experiences like ziplining, camping, canoeing, and more.
I really love the activities. It's very outgoing. You have to put yourself there. You got to be in that mindset to do it. And it's just good environment, good vibes.
Elena Einish is one of the junior rangers at Camp Ukpiapik. She's from Kawawa-Chikamach, a Naskapi community almost 1,000 kilometers north of the Valcartier military base, where the camp takes place. Einish says she's learned survival skills and to
really consider your peers. I've been having trouble with that, but just learning and communicating really helped me overall. Just really think about one another and not just think for myself, because as a platoon, we are a whole.
Talia Daniluk of Wemengee said she's made new friends from other nations at the camp.
I think it's something fun to experience and something cool to tell people that you've been a part of.
Daniluk said her experience with the program has sparked her interest in the Canadian Army.
We had a presentation earlier today about the Canadian Army, and it was interesting, so I'm thinking about it.
But according to Lucas Spencer Otter, one of the camp's leaders, the goal of the Junior Rangers program is not Army recruitment. It's to get youth in remote communities to push themselves.
They do things that thought it was not possible for them, they thought they'd never do, and they just end up accomplishing those.
Spencer Otter said being a Junior Ranger helped him break out shell.
Instead of being comfortable in a small community, kind of like, isolated from the rest of Canada there, this program really allowed me to go out, venture beyond my means that I was afforded to. And I just enjoy so much parts of the program, like from the friends, leadership skills you learn along the way, organization skills, discipline, all that good stuff.
Now, as a Canadian Ranger, he runs the Junior Ranger program up in his home community of Chisasibi, a Cree community along James Bay, and he's designated to help the community in case of emergency.
Being part of this program really continues to push me to my limits there, instead of being comfortable. So I enjoy the challenge that it comes with the role.
Right turn. By the left, quick, march.
Amelia Fournier, APTN National News, Valcartier Military Base, Quebec.
We have to take another short break. We'll be back right after this. Faceless corn husk dolls have a long history in North America. They're as old as corn itself. A Mohawk woman from Six Nations continues to create these traditional dolls. It's a craft that she shares across the globe. Here's Annette Francis with that story.
Angel Dockstader has perfected the art of creating corn husk dolls.
It's part of who I am. I grew up eating corn soup and cornbread and watching my mom make the dolls and drying the corn, and my sister lies the corn. You know, it was for me and my family. It was just a part of who we were.
In fact, one piece entitled The Elder Brothers is part of a summer exhibition called War Games at the Canadian War Museum in Ottawa.
Well, one of the things I've noticed
according to Andrew Birch, the exhibit looks at the historical intersection of war played in games. He said the size, scale, and detail of the corn husk set makes it a key piece of art for the exhibition.
So this for us was a really interesting artifact, a really compelling artwork that also linked into this message of the way that games spread and are adapted and adopted throughout different cultures over time. And it also had a personal history for the artist Angel Dockstader, who played chess with her family. And so this was something that they did for fun. And she integrated her artwork into something that was a source of enjoyment for her.
Back home in Six Nations, Angel Dockstader says the piece took over a year to complete. She says she's pleased to see her work is on display. She says in a way it pays homage to her grandfather.
My grandfather was a World War II vet, and they weren't treated great at all. You know, I'm sure you know the history of that. And my grandfather was on the beach in Normandy. You know, he was a vet, and I just growing up, seeing how they were treated, you know, our First Nations vets, you know, like it's unreal. And so when he wanted to use that in the War Museum, I'm like, yes, do that.
Any day of the week, you'll find her and her partner John at work in their craft shop.
I'm just putting the legs on this guy. Or girl, whatever she.
Making these dolls is a full-time business.
During the pandemic, you know, it was very good to us because we work from home, and a lot of people were purchasing from home-based businesses, right, during the pandemic. But the recognition kind of started with the chess set. The orders are good. They're, you know, I'm not going to be driving a Bentley in 5 months from it, but, you know, it pays the bills, right? It pays everything.
More of Dockstader's work can be found online. The War Games exhibition will be on display until the end of December. Anna Francis, APTN National News.
That's our show for tonight. If you want to see any of the stories we shared here and more, go to aptnnews.ca. Thanks for joining us and enjoy the rest of your weekend.